The character of Matt Remick is largely based on me, honestly. It really came from my own personal fears of how I interact with the industry, how I make my own choices, if I'm making the right choices, the sheer panic that I feel at times while navigating my job in this industry, the awkwardness I feel when interacting with people that I've, again, looked up to my whole life. Yeah, I'd say Matt Remick is mostly based on me.
For the Los Angeles Times, I'm Yvonne Villarreal, and this is the Envelope Writers Roundtable. Our guest today, Deborah Cahn, tells the story of an American Foreign Service officer thrust into a complicated web of geopolitics in Netflix's The Diplomat.
You should watch yourself.
R. Scott Gemmell focuses on the frontline workers inside a Pittsburgh hospital for a single day in Max's The Pitt.
It's what we do. We can't help it. We're the bees that protect the hive.
Lauren LeFranc reimagines the Batman villain Oswald Cobblepot as a rising Gotham City kingpin, Oz Cobb, in Max's The Penguin.
You're gonna do everything I say, or else I'll murder you and anyone you care about.
Craig Mazin helms HBO's The Last of Us, focusing on the grief and trauma of survivors of an apocalyptic pandemic based on the popular video game series.
I saved her.
Seth Rogen examines a Hollywood studio's attempt to keep movies alive in the Apple TV Plus comedy, The Studio.
I am as bottom line oriented as anyone in this town.
I believe you.
Great.
And Jen Statsky is the co-creator of Hacks, a look inside the cutthroat world of comedy.
What?
It's not funny. She's trying to get me fired.
We're gonna start by going back in time. Tell me about your first spec script, Deborah.
That's terrible. So my first spec script, I didn't know at the time if I was a comedy writer or a drama writer, and I figured out eventually that if you're a drama writer and you land a joke, it's like they throw a parade. Whereas if you're a comedy writer, it's like, okay, but if you can't do any better, we'll go with that. So I had written like a Friends spec, and I had a Julie Rottenberg, who's a great comedy writer. I don't know if any of you have ever. So we had gone to college together, and I asked her to read it, and like watching her face as she tried to say, so you've used really every cliche that there is, like all of them in one place, which is its own kind of success.
Lauren, what about you?
I wrote a 60-page all caps Will and Grace spec.
They still talk about it.
They do. With a squirrel as a prominent role. Outside, they were at a camping trip, so I understood the spec script thing really well. And I thought it was funny. I didn't know what I was doing, obviously. And I don't know why I decided to make it all caps. I think I was just so excited. So yeah, it was slightly different than the stuff that I write now. But I came out here thinking I would do comedy as well. And then at the time, everyone was like, comedy's dead. Like all these dudes who are in comedy rooms, they're not even getting jobs. So you're not gonna get a job. And I was like, okay, I guess I should try to write drama, and kind of fell into it that way. But I don't like being put in a box. I've never really, I mean, who does? But I've never really felt like, oh, I'm only this or I'm only that. I love writing comedy and drama that don't have experience writing comedy in the way that these guys do.
Seth or Jen, I'm curious, like with shows like yours, are you more interested or what interests you about how viewers react versus how people in the industry are reacting to your shows?
It's a good question. I mean, I hope they're reacting the same, honestly. I mean, I think there's probably a nuance that people in the industry are picking up on that. It's just they more personally relate to it. But yeah, in general, we just wanted to make something that was comedically resonant to people. And I never found, I mean, when I was a kid, my favorite show was like the Larry Sanders Show, and I knew nothing about the inner workings of talk shows, and I didn't even know who half the famous people. I didn't know who like Tom Petty. Well, I didn't know who a lot of the people who were lampooning themselves on the show were. I just loved the characters and the storylines and the individual episodes, and so that was really what we tried to do. As I'm sure was to make something that was as personal as we could, and as spoke to as many of the truths of our lives that we could, but hopefully presenting them in an episode-to-episode basis in a way that just played like any other comedy in a lot of ways, where you gave them a comedic premise and you set it up and then you pay it off and hopefully wrap it up by the time the episode's over, basically. Yeah.
Are you kidding me? The Oneer is the ultimate cinematic achievement, It's like the perfect marriage of artistry and technicality. You got Birdman, Children of Men, Goodfellas,
I was dating Ray Liotta when they shot that. The man had a package like a caramel leather sofa. Rest in peace.
Jen, is there either in the conversations you have with friends or just hearing the chatter around town, is there something like frustration within the industry that fueled the writer's room this season?
I don't think there was like a particular frustration that fueled the writer's room. I think that we, like Seth was saying, it is an industry-based show that you want it to feel really real, but you don't ever want it to feel not inclusive to other people watching who aren't in the industry. But I think this season, as our business changes and as tech makes our business change quite a bit, I think we wanted to explore the it's always a very delicate dance between art and commerce, movie making, TV making, and I think we just wanted to further explore what that is like in an era where there's a lot of pressure put on each individual property to maximize profit for this massive company that is for all of us, for all of our shows. All of our shows are made for a massive company in one way or another, and just wanted to speak truthfully to how perhaps the intersection of art and commerce is getting more tricky to navigate.
Hey girls, hey, how are you? Smile. People are starting to stare, so smile. Laugh. Oh, Deborah. No, both of you listen to me. This is how this is gonna go. You're gonna stay out of each other's way.
Hi, I'm Scott Gemmell from the Pitt, and you're watching the LA Times Envelope Writers Roundtable.
The Penguin is a rise to power story, and yet it's also, I think, more than that, a psychological character study of this man and what he's willing to do to achieve a level of power.
Lauren, The Penguin's obviously a fictional show, but is tethered to source material that's really beloved by fans. And I'm curious what the conversations are like with DC or with Matt Reeves when your series has to fit into a larger canon or a strategy. What can you share?
Well, Matt gave me a lot of great creative freedom, which I really appreciated, and honestly, need in order to make a television show. But I knew where the Batman ended. I knew where Oz ended in the Batman. There's a terrible flood that happens, and then there's a power vacuum. And I knew my job was to arc him to, rise to power and achieve a certain level of power by the end. And outside of that, I was given carte blanche and I could just play. And that's the most exciting thing to me.
This scumbag, he disrespected me. You're gonna disrespect me, Vic? No, because you and me, we're in this together now. Which means I own you.
I feel pressure to tell a great story and to write interesting, engaging characters that are surprising and to kind of surprise myself. I mean, I think I'm not the first type of person you would think who would get an opportunity to write a guy like Oz necessarily and to write into this type of world. I think there's been a lot of crime dramas and a lot of genre shows or features that don't have the lens that I have on a man like that. So I took that seriously, and I also really wanted to pepper the world with really interesting, complicated women as well. I felt like in some of these genres, sometimes those characters weren't as fully formed. And so, you know, again, like Matt and DC and HBO were so gracious with what they afforded me that I just got to kind of take it and run with it.
Well, Craig, you know what it's like working with source material, and we knew what was coming with a fan favorite character. In part 2 of the video game, it happens, and there was a lot of commentary on what this would mean for the show and what it would look like. First, tell me about your experience of the death of Joel in the video game, like you playing it, and then how that sort of informed what you wanted to see out of season 2 and where exactly it would fall.
Well, I was pretty impressed. I mean, I was upset when it happened, but I wasn't upset at the game. You know, I was upset because I loved him, but I got it. Like, it was narratively the right thing to do. If you make a story that is about moral outcomes and the consequences of our behavior, and somebody goes through a hospital and murders a whole lot of people and kind of dooms the world to be stuck in this terrible place and takes away the one hope they have of getting out of it, yeah, there should be a consequence. If there's no consequence, or even a mild consequence, then it's a bit neutered, isn't it?
Did you do something to her? Did you hurt her? Then what? What did you do?
Hell, I love the story of that game. I love the story of both games. So to me, it was, sometimes people do ask me, like, was there any part of you that was like, hey, let's not have Joel die? No. That would be the craziest thing of all time.
Was HBO like,
no,
can we prolong it?
No.
Delay it?
No.
Yeah.
No. I know people, they're like, there's no way they're gonna let Pedro Pascal die. He's a superstar. I'm like, Pedro Pascal.
Sound like
all Pedro does is die in everything. I don't know why they thought he wasn't gonna die. He is the Sean Bean of Pedro Pascal's. And so, no, it was a necessary thing to happen. And I do think we're in a time now with television where there's an understanding some shows are designed to go. They are perpetual narrative machines, and they end when they get canceled. But a lot of shows have a built-in end. So there's a beginning and a middle and an end, which wasn't always the case. And this is part of the beginning of the end in its own way. This is the fulcrum point. And so we're halfway in, you know, and this is what needed to happen.
Hi, I'm Deborah Cahn from The Diplomat, and you're watching the LA Times Envelope Writers Roundtable.
It came from trying to create a character who was very confident. Dr. Robbie, we wanted to show, you know, someone at their best as a physician, but also someone who's gone through COVID and how that affected them. So Robbie is certainly a flawed character who has to deal with some PTSD that he's been shoving down, and the first season of the show, it finally comes to a head, and that's when he has this big meltdown.
Scott, on the Pitt, you're tackling issues like the measles outbreak or violence against healthcare workers. How closely are you working with consultants to break these stories?
On any given day, we have a doctor on set who's a technical advisor, and a lot of my background actors are real nurses, so I have a lot of that going on. My right-hand man is Dr. Joe Sachs. Joe and I go back to ER days, and he's still practicing medicine. He's the kind of guy who went to med school and film school at the same time, so a little bit of an overachiever. And I have a new doctor. We just hired Dr. Mel Herbert, who used to run AMRAP, which was a program they do for emergency physicians every month, basically, and all over the world, to teach them about new techniques and new problems. And then right now, especially right now, while we're in sort of prep for next season when writing, every week we probably have 2 or 3 experts come in and will talk to us about whether it's potential measles outbreak, whether it's, you know, a lot of times we'll say to the medical community, and before we even started, you know, we sort of it was a return to it for me, and I'd been away for a while, and it was sort of like, what's changed, what's gotten better, what hasn't. And a lot of times it's, asking them, whether it's nurses or, people who we talk about human trafficking, child abuse, any of these topics, we talk to the professionals, and, what do you not see being on television? What would you like the audience to know? What do you want people to know about your job or this condition or this situation that we're not being told? Mm-hmm. So we try to make it as authentic as possible. And I think part of the reason we've gotten some nice feedback is because the medical professionals have embraced the show, and we've shown what it is that they go through. And I don't think people realize, just how, we were at home watching television while COVID was going on, and these people were, in some cases dying, or, and afterwards there were a lot of suicides because the stress was just, it was horrific, and it's really had long-term effect on these people, in terms of the post-traumatic stress disorders and things like that.
We saw 112 mass casualty patients come through here in the last 4 hours, and 106 of them are gonna live. None of us are going to forget today, even if we really, really want to.
Deborah, on this season of The Diplomat, we have an aging president whose capabilities are called into question, and you have a sitting vice president who sort of does a lot of his bidding. And spoiler alert, she becomes president by the season's end. How is writing a political drama different today than it was during your time on The West Wing?
So back in the West Wing days, we would have people come in, people who worked in the field, and we would say, what are you worried about that we don't know to worry about yet? And that was a pretty good barometer for getting an interesting story that was likely to still be topical in a year. Like, that's all you want, really, is to not be completely lapped by the news when you're trying to tell a story that's not going to go to air for a year. Mm-hmm. Now we're sort of released from any, boundaries of any kind. There's nothing that we can do that's more absurd than what's happening. So, in a way, it like suddenly we're doing a documentary, or we're doing like a sort of a balm for what you wish government was like, or what you sort of vaguely remember it was like, but we're trying to stay in the headspace of what is the foreign policy community going to be thinking about in the next 2 years, and trying to find something that will continue to feel relevant. But more and more, it's like, when this was a little bit more sane, what were the conflicts? Like, what are the conflicts that sane people have with each other in this field? Like, what are the, what happens when you can look at two people and you feel like they both have good values and they are kind to children? What do they fight about?
Is that a paperclip?
Oh, yes, I had a zipper issue.
When you're a second-tier diplomat in a third world war zone, that may read as scrappy. If you're representing the interests of 300 million Americans whose health care is failing, whose planet is burning, whose future might get a little bit better or a little bit worse based on what you do in the course of a day, it's best to look like the care of your trousers wasn't more than you could manage.
But do you find anything interesting about what it would look like to explore people that, in your maybe words, are insane or like not?
I don't. I feel like that's been done a lot. Like the idea of a corrupt politician or a venal, head of state, like that ground has been well covered. And I think that there's a sort of a tendency, particularly if you're telling stories about dealing with other countries and, people who are fighting each other and they're at war, there's a just sort of a base level where the good guys and they're the bad guys. And once you talk to people in the field and you learn the massive complexity of inside every decision, it would be easier if it was just that they're evil.
Hi, I'm Jen Statsky from Hacks, and you're watching the LA Times Envelope Writers Roundtable.
Andor is a miracle, and we'd be so lucky if we see something like it ever again.
I'm not sure how to thank you.
Make it worth it. And the critics agree. It's the best television of the year so far.
I came with you to be part of something.
It's one of the best TV shows of the decade. For your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. Andor Season 2, now streaming only on Disney+.
Deborah and Ava are certainly still mentor and protege, but over the course of their relationship, it has evolved, and Ava has grown, and for better or worse, learned a lot from Deborah. And so she is certainly on much more equal footing with Deborah than she was at the beginning of the series.
Seth, there's an episode of The Studio set at the Golden Globes where you have Netflix executive Ted Sarandos standing next to you at a urinal. How on earth did you make that happen?
The episode set at the Golden Globes, and the whole joke in the episode, which is very based on real life, is that my character has a film there that is projected to win Best Musical or Comedy, and Zoe Kravitz in the episode directed it, and he desperately just wants to be thanked in her acceptance speech. And he starts to feel like maybe he's not going to be thanked in her speech, and so he starts going to great lengths to get himself thanked in the speech. And meanwhile, there's like a parallel story where everyone's thanking Ted Sarandos over and over and over again, and we keep cutting him in the audience, and he's so grateful. And then, yes, finally there's like a scene where I see Ted in the bathroom and kind of have a confrontation with him about getting thanked. And he says that he makes it contractual and that he
Maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion in my head. It just seems like she doesn't, consider me a part of the filmmaking team, and now I'm worried that if she wins, she's not going to thank me in her speech. But maybe that doesn't even matter, right?
Oh, no. That's everything.
Everything?
It's the most unsatisfying thing about being an executive.
And I thought, to us, it was, to what Jen's saying, it was the perfect representation of what my character's frustration would be, is that Ted Sarandos, the man who runs Netflix, is getting all this acclaim at the Golden Globes specifically, which is something that's been a Hollywood mainstay forever. And it would be a particular affront to my character that he's the guy that keeps getting thanked over and over, especially when he thinks he's not going to get thanked. And so we just had this idea that maybe he would do it. And I literally, what's funny is I emailed him and asked him. I didn't ask permission. I wrote into the script and sent him the script and said, "Would you do this?" And he instantly wrote back and said yes. And then I heard and then Apple heard I was going to do it, not knowing I had done it, and was like, "You can't do that." And they were like, "What about Tim Cook?" And I was like, "No, I don't think it's the same joke." And they were like, "We don't think you should do it." I was like, "Unfortunately, it's too late. I have done it, and he has said yes, and he's going to do it." And so he did it, and he was great, and he was so funny. And I don't think he's particularly threatened by Apple. I have to say, from a career, from a streaming standpoint. And so, he thought it was fun. I was so glad that he did, and he got the joke. And yeah, to me, but it speaks to just my fear of convincing the literal most powerful man in all of Hollywood to come do a cameo on my show, and just praying to God that I don't embarrass him or make him think I'm an idiot or let him down, or I just want to think I'm just waiting for the email where he finally watches the episode and is like, "It's funny." That's all I want.
I'm sure he wishes he had your show.
But do you not have the fear? Because I have a little bit of good student fear. Did you, when Apple was like, "You can't do that," do you have "Oh no, I'm in trouble" fear?
I have none of that whatsoever. No.
I have. Okay.
I come from when we were starting out making movies, I was taught the most confrontational positioning you could ever have, and that's what was expected at the time. And Amy Pascal, who one of the characters of the show is partially based on, there was a real friction makes fire mentality, especially at Sony, in the early 2000s when I was working there. So like we were taught like there was always a fight expected, and the expectation was you weren't going to do anything anyone asked you to do, basically. And so I've carried that through to television. And we made our show in a way where they couldn't give us notes on it. Really.
Right.
I mean, that was not a mistake. Like we shot the show in such a way where no editorial notes could be given to us. And so that was also like a huge alleviation of pressure on our parts in a lot of ways, where like we literally couldn't change anything.
The thing of ask for forgiveness later.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lauren LeFranc from The Penguin, and you're watching the LA Times Envelope Writers Roundtable.
To me, if the first season was about figuring out how to manage your grief and overcome your grief by creating a new relationship, the way that Joel creates with Bella, or rather, the way that Joel creates with Ellie, in season 2, it's about managing grief by trying to exact some kind of justice. But I think in both cases, we can see how whether you try and manage it one way or the other, if you can't accept it, something bad is going to happen. And that's what happens.
Well, something you all have experience with is the traditional release model and the modern release model. And there's now obviously a mix of both. And it's been interesting. Like I've seen social media chatter of people being like, this whole once a week thing is really neat. Like, you know, obviously younger people that maybe don't have as much experience.
You like tune in on a night and day and you all watch it at the same time.
Novel.
TVs were
So weird.
Wow, look at this.
But I mean, Scott, in particular, the Pitt, like just seeing the way people would rally around every week to sort of see what happened next. What do you like about the weekly release?
I've only ever done that. This is my first streaming show, and we're doing it in a traditional drop a week. So I've never had a show that was bingeable. So I don't know any other way.
But was there talk of wanting it to be released all at once?
No, I don't think so. At one point, they were going to release 3 episodes at once, but they only released 2. I don't have a dog in that fight. I think my show, just because of the nature of it, would be very hard to binge. Like, that's
someone who's been binging it, I can attest to that.
I'll confess, I tried to do the rewatch of like 15 episodes to feel like I did the shift, and it was rough.
No, I don't recommend that. I can't even do that. So, I don't think it's a binge kind of show.
Yours comes out all at once.
It does. I don't love that. It's not what I would choose. I think Netflix offers a lot of other pluses. It's got a big audience all over the world, and that's really nice. But I came up in broadcast television, and the idea that you've created this thing and it's a story that you've experienced over time, and then people are like 2 days and done. It's
weird.
Yeah.
And it changes the way that you write.
They're doing this new thing. I mean, at least I've been explained to that even over the last few years, what's happening is for shows that are coming out week by week, people will now sort of save up 3 at a time.
Yeah.
So they don't want to watch week after week, because my whole thing was like, oh, the water cooler experience is so great. You know, there was that classic Game of Thrones Sunday night, Monday morning go to work and be like, oh my God, they chopped off Ned Stark's head. And
whoa.
They killed him. He did. Now they're like, people just don't, they're like, it's not enough. If I'm gonna sit down and watch TV, I wanna be able to actually blow through 3 episodes. So there's this like weird accordion thing going on, and I don't know where this is going.
I produced the show The Boys, and we actually went from them all coming out at once to a weekly,
which was
thing.
smart.
And it did not affect the viewership in any way, shape, or form, was what we were told.
That's what you were told.
But what it did affect, that we could just see, was like its sustained cultural impact.
Yeah.
Like, it was just people talked about it for 3 months instead of like 3 weeks of like incredibly intense chatter, and instead it was like it just occupied more space in people's heads, which I think was beneficial to the show.
Like if Shogun had all come out in one day, I think
Yeah.
it would have just not had the impact that it did.
But The Bear comes out all in one day, which has a huge impact.
They've
yeah.
been both. Yeah, it's.
I guess that's true.
Do you not worry, though, that sometimes when the shows are dropped like that, and then it takes a year and a half or
Right.
2 years for the show to come back, that people have forgotten, whereas if they were dropping once a week, that space between when it airs would be short.
But then the second season
Why,
of
yes,
Severance
I
was
do
like,
worry.
but then the second season of Severance was colossally successful and much more popular than the first season. There was 3 years between these.
And with the amount of episodes we make, I mean, well, you make more than we do, but it's not 20 whatever it used to be, 22 episodes.
That's true.
Nobody does anymore. So maybe you eat up 3 months. Maybe it's a 3-month difference. you know?
Hi, I'm Seth Rogen from the studio, and you're watching the LA Times Envelope Writers Roundtable.
The Diplomat is a show about diplomacy, oddly enough, and mostly a show about marriage. It's marriage between people, marriage between countries. How do you survive a long-term relationship?
The talk of the town is runaway production and how to stop it. Both Hacks and the studio are shot in and are about modern Hollywood. Talk about the advantage of making those shows in LA. Did it require a lot of fight on your part to make it happen? Jen?
It didn't require fight on the part when we pitched the show and sold it and we started shooting in deep COVID. It was always going to be shot here, and yeah, we feel incredibly lucky to do it. And you know, we've never had a fight about it. A lot of people, to the credit of our amazing crew, are like, "Oh, do you move to Vegas? Do you live in Vegas for like 3 months a year?" And I'm like, we've only ever shot a couple days in Vegas every season. Like it's all shot here in LA, and yeah, it's sad to us that so many productions are moving out of LA, because the way that LA and the community has like received our production over the years has been phenomenal and wonderful and lovely. And we shot a lot in Altadena, and sadly Deborah's LA mansion was lost in the fires earlier this year. And just that community of people, and like I feel so connected to LA because I shoot here, because I make my show here, because I write it here, I shoot it here, I edit it here. And that connection to Hollywood, I think, is so important. And the more we send it elsewhere for cost-cutting measures, you lose that community, you lose that thing that is so important about what keeps our industry together. And I do think eventually it will, the more you separate it, it will affect creative.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we feel incredibly lucky to have done it. And it's sad because now, I'm sure you get this too, and like when I tell people I shoot in LA, they go, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky." It sucks that that's the case.
Was it a fight for you or no?
No, not for us. I mean, honestly, we like partially conceived of a thing that we could shoot in Los Angeles. Like that was not a coincidence. Like as we were thinking of what is a thing we would like to do for years and years and years, and really commit ourselves to, and really put build our lives around in some ways, the idea of making a thing that was like anchored in Los Angeles was actually very important to us. And the content, there's this documentary called Los Angeles Plays Itself, which was actually like one of the things that inspired us most in making the show. And it's all about Los Angeles' history, is kind of told through movies and its architecture and things like that. And so, yeah, like we were incredibly... We would write the episodes to LA locations. Like that Golden Globes episode was like written to be in the Beverly Hilton Hotel, and we wrote a whole episode that was like set at the Chateau Marmont, and everyone was like, "Could this be somewhere else?" And we were like, "No, like the whole thing is like has to be in these places." This, for whatever reason, is like what we view as the experience of this show, is letting people into these actual rooms and houses and hotels, and that to us that was just so creatively exciting. And so and it's literally set on a lot, so and I think honestly the franchise did us some favors, because it was also set on a lot, but a decidedly not American one, and I think that actually allowed us to have even like a starker contrast in some ways. But they no, it was never a big thing for us, and thank God. But yeah, it's great to shoot in LA, and I think especially shows about the industry. Yeah. I mean, This Is the End is similar, and we all actors and set in Hollywood. It's like we shot it in New Orleans, we didn't shoot in LA for one day. So we're hyper aware that it's just because we're making all this LA doesn't mean we're shooting in LA.
Well,
yeah.
Well, Scott, to that point, I mean, your show is set in Pittsburgh, and you did film exteriors there, but the principal production happened on the WB lot. And I know Noah has said that was sort of that was the plan from the start. Talk about why that was important for you.
Well, I mean, the show could have been shot in Moose Jaw. I mean, we're all on one set, and we only shoot 3 days, like in Pittsburgh. But it was important to bring the work here, you know. So we fought really hard to get the California tax credit, and you know, I think for me, part of the most important part of my job, besides, you know, writing producible scripts that are on time, is to keep my show on the air as long as possible, to keep everyone employed as long as possible, and you know, that's the thing I like the best about it. This is the first show that Noah's done since he left DR that's shot in Los Angeles. You know, he's been Atlanta.
He used to be my neighbor in Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
Yeah. So,
right next to me.
you know, and it's a shame, you know. I mean, there's more production now, but when we first were at Warner Brothers for this, when we first started, I mean, it was a ghost town, and it's so sad because, you know, I've been in the business for, 40 years and still get excited when I go on a lot, you know, and to see them sort of become, unused just because it's cheaper to shoot somewhere else. And there's so many talented people here and like so many actors, and it's hard on their families. If you have to go to Albuquerque for 6 months.
1 hour.
So for me, it's really important. And I have access to all the great, we got great actors, we got great craftspeople here. The weather doesn't really affect me. I said my next show, I'm not leaving the stage. So that's...
It's kind of brilliant. Like,
yeah, I never want to leave the stage again.
I know.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. Also because I think there's this whole thing, especially in writers' rooms, where like, I came up in network TV too. And I spent a lot of time on the Warner Brothers lot. That was like one of my little homes for like 3 years on a show. And you used to be able to write what you're doing, right? Produce, do post, all in the same lot. So you had a family that you were able to form, and then you could mentor writers. And I would not be able to be a showrunner if not for all the people who came before me who mentored me, and like I could walk to set. So of course I can produce my own episode. And then I can walk to post. Great, you want to come sit in the Bay and like learn how to do this? And now, we shoot in New York, and the last show I ran was in Toronto. And prior to that, I was in LA consistently for like over a decade on every single show where I got to have that experience. And it's so hard now where you're asking writers, especially if networks aren't paying for writers to go to set, you're like, can you pay for yourself to fly to New York? Like, it just makes it so hard to be able to educate people in the way that I feel like I was privileged enough to be educated.
Sophia, I thought you was still at,
Arkham?
Yeah.
No. I've been rehabilitated.
Before we wrap, please tell me what you're watching. Jen, we were talking about The Valley earlier.
Oh, I watched The Valley too.
I know.
It's
I've
amazing.
been watching The Valley.
Do you watch The Valley after show?
I have watched some of The Valley.
Almost as good as The Valley.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about The Valley this season?
Oh, it's amazing.
Is Jax too toxic for you, or how?
No, it's great.
I'm really worried about Jax.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really worried.
We watch reality television.
Yeah.
I see the blank looks on everybody's
We're in comedy.
In comedy, that's what we do.
The Valley is a
I can't tell you
horrible.
how scared I was when you were talking, and then how good I felt when you were like, "It's reality."
It's like so Vanderpump Rules.
Ish.
It's an offshoot.
Which is an offshoot of Beverly
Which is an offshoot of the Real
Housewives. This is an echo of an echo.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yes, it's an echo of an echo of garbage.
But it's so good.
But it's so, It is the worst indictment of heterosexual marriage I've ever seen.
Yes, it really is.
It's about like the San Fernando Valley is what it is.
It's about like
it's about Valley Village.
Valley
It's like
Village.
Valley Village.
It's the couples that have moved to the valley and are having children, and
they are all in very bad places in their lives.
They're like
it's amazing.
You think reality shows most people are in bad places? That's sadly what people want to watch. These people
ones
are
are
in
in really-
particularly bad.
Yes. And the show seems to be compounding it, I think.
Yeah. Weirdly, being on a reality show is not helping.
You should do the
their
Valley and Below Deck for sure.
I also like that.
What's Below Deck?
It's another great reality show.
Let me guess. They're on a boat.
They are. It's about yacht.
You need to be a guest. You have to be a guest.
They've asked.
They've asked?
They make you pay.
Wait,
what?
Yeah.
You pay for
They
the
make you pay.
How much do they make you pay?
It's like how much a yacht would be. It's like
You
80
have to
grand
buy
or
a
something like that. You know, it's like to go on a yacht for a week. Like you pay for the week. You pay for the honor of being filmed on a Bravo reality show. Yes, literally. You are paying them. I get why they do it. I was like, I personally don't need to do that. Yeah.
Out of context, I'm like so invested.
You gotta watch it.
Why am I watching your show?
Yeah, don't watch. Nothing I will ever make is as good as The Valley. I can tell you that right now.
We're going to wrap here and then head to Jack's, I think. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. It was great hearing from all of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.